All right, guys, what's up? So, this is gonna be a little weird. I'm gonna be popping in and out. I'm gonna be using a video of me just reading the New York Post article. That was the first thing I recorded about this because I didn't know where to find the actual lawsuit, and then I found the actual lawsuit, and that provided a lot of necessary context to what was going on. So I'm going to keep the original recording in to just kind of like anchor the video, but I'm going to be doing the majority of the talking like I am right now. I also want to say I have no legal expertise whatsoever, no legal training. So I'm reading through a lawsuit. I could be misunderstanding stuff. It's highly likely. This is just a layman reading a lawsuit, and this is obviously for entertainment purposes. Last thing, I know Tyshawn has some rabidly passionate fans that are in love with him. And if I say anything negative about him, they'll lose their shit. I don't care what happens in this. This is white collar on white collar violence, billion-dollar company versus millionaire. In my opinion, both parties are at fault at different points of this. And at the end of the day, they're fighting over money. This is literally just two entities, both of which are concerned with one thing and one thing only: money. More money than you or I or probably anyone else watching this fucking video will see or feel or comprehend in your shitty life. So just remember that next time you're fighting about either one of these fucking people in a comment section or something. Top NYC skater known as Michael Jordan of the sport. I thought at the time reading this that whoever wrote this New York Post article was just calling Tyshawn the Michael Jordan of skateboarding. But no, after reading the lawsuit, you come to find the person calling Tyshawn the Michael Jordan of the sport is actually Tyshawn. Sues streetwear giant Supreme for eye-popping $26 million. Uh-oh. Yep, me again, sorry. Just here to correct the record. He actually wants $76 million. That's how much he's after. You can see only one of his little, there's an A and a B and a C, and all of those are separate. So on the A, he wants 26. On the B, he wants 25. And then on the C, he wants another 25. Claims the brand destroyed his career. I mean, I had no idea. Nobody's even been talking about this, that Tyshawn has had his career destroyed. I guess we'll examine that a little more intensely in a second. Streetwear giant Supreme killed a major sponsorship deal with a top pro skateboarder and then spread malicious rumors blaming him for the fallout. A new $26 million lawsuit alleges $26 million. Okay. Tyshawn Jones, a 26-year-old pro skater from the Bronx, hailed as the best in the sport, is suing Supreme for not just arbitrarily killing his $1 million a year deal and his 13-year relationship with the brand, but also for destroying his young career by effectively blacklisting him, his bombshell suit claims. Then Tyshawn, he talked to the New York Post today, and he said, "I am saddened it has come to this, but I have a duty to myself and my career and feel a responsibility to the next generation of skateboarders to stand up for what is right." So I'm going to explain in a second why I think that's so funny, but part of the lawsuit here is this section where Tyshawn is asking for punitive damages, which is basically a claim to try to protect future athletes by disincentivizing this behavior. And how can that be best accomplished? Well, by giving me $25 million, of course. That would really teach everybody a lesson and would totally benefit future athletes also. And myself, of course, a present athlete. So I find this angle particularly funny from Tyshawn because if you look at his brand, King Skateboards, he's been caught a few times stealing graphics, but particularly like the theme of his brand, King, is like celebration of Black culture, Black excellence. He puts a lot of famous actors, musicians, civil rights leaders on his graphics. You know, I'm probably not the messenger that should be making this critique. It's hard to ignore. He's got King, he's got a crown. It's like, it's pretty clear what the message of the brand, what they're selling is. He got caught stealing from this artist in Ghana. He just ripped the graphic and then stuck it on his skateboard. and then I guess did not comprehend how ironic that would be. Come on, dude. You're a multimillionaire. You launched this brand that's all about, uplifting black culture, and then you're stealing from a black artist who I have no idea what that guy's net worth is, but I imagine he doesn't have a pro shoe for Adidas. I mean, what the fuck do you think that looks like to people? So for you then in this lawsuit to be like, for moral reasons, I need 25 mil. It's like, yeah, you need 25 mil, all right. Let's just be honest, dude. The guy is a grifter. He's only after money. And I don't care. That's fine, dude. A lot of people in this world are only after money. And I don't have the emotional bandwidth anymore to like really get angry. There's so much horse shit happening constantly. My expectations of how ridiculous things can become are constantly broken to the point now where I have no expectations. Like me waking up and reading the fact that Tyshawn was suing Supreme for $76 million. I'm completely desensitized, but the fact that there's supposed to be like this moral spin on things, I just don't see it. And I should clarify, he did end up paying that guy and giving him credit, the artist from Ghana, but after the fact, after he got caught, it's obvious, his goal was, yeah, I'll just take this and then not pay him. Oh, I got caught. Okay, I'll pay him now. It's like, what the intention was. Another comment from Tyshawn: Supreme's success has been shaped in large part by the contributions of young talent, and I believe those contributions deserve to be respected. Okay, now remember, he's been with Supreme for 13 years. I don't know how much they were paying him for the majority of the time, but his most recent contract, he was being paid $1 million a year. Clearly, they were respecting him. They were valuing his talents for $1 million a year. I mean, that is unprecedented money in the current skateboarding climate. Almost nobody else is getting that kind of cash. I would seriously doubt anyone else on Supreme even comes close to that. Jones, a worldwide phenom, is known for his impressive skating feats across New York City, a talent that Supreme picked up on early when it offered him a sponsorship when he was only 13. But after Supreme killed the deal last September in an alleged effort to quickly shed costs, other brands started backing away from Jones too, he claims, in his lawsuit filed Monday in Manhattan in the Supreme Court. This is one of Tyshawn's major claims, which is that because VF Corp was about to sell Supreme to Luxottica for $1.6 billion, VF Corp was looking to cost cut and balance their books wherever they possibly could. So something that didn't really add up to this claim to me is that why fire Tyshawn first? Why fire your principal rider, the most important guy, when Supreme employs about 4,000 fucking skateboarders? They have Aiden Mackey, Sean Pablo, Kevin Bradley, Vincent Tuzri, a lot of dudes that don't really do much of anything anymore. Why wouldn't you trim the fat there? Why would you continue paying those kinds of guys if you were desperate to save as much money as possible? The alternative explanation could be that Tyshawn had some stock options, which maybe were worth a lot of money. Value of shares he held in Supreme, the full value of which could only be realized if he was employed at the time of the new acquisition closed. So I guess part of Tyshawn's contract is that he had some stock options within Supreme, and he would only be able to realize or cash these stock options if he were employed by Supreme at the time of the sale. So he's saying he was fired like 2 or 3 weeks before this sale went through, which meant he lost out not only on the remainder of his contract, but on these apparent stock options, which we'll get into whether or not he was wrongfully terminated. But I will say, if you know that you have a bunch of money that you could be earning in stock options, and you only get that money if you don't violate your contract, do not violate your contract. There's blame on both sides in this situation, in my opinion, but Jesus Christ, dude, it looks pretty stupid to deliberately do stuff that could get you fired and then go, oh my God, nobody could have seen this coming. So the credibility of this claim on Tyshawn's behalf, I think, will largely be determined by the amount of money that he is supposedly owed, because I guess he and his lawyers don't know how much these stock options are actually worth. They have to get that information from Supreme. If he was owed $200,000, that probably didn't factor massively into Supreme's decision to fire him. But if he was owed like $1, $2, $3 million, maybe even more. I mean, that could definitely be a motivator, and also should have been a motivator for Tyshawn to not do anything dumb. Supreme allegedly told multiple third parties Tyshawn was kicked off Supreme for breaching his agreement with them. This is from the actual lawsuit. The termination notice is premised upon a purported material breach by Tyshawn, namely one photo shoot depicting Tyshawn wearing Marc Jacobs apparel disseminated on social media in August of 2024. So Tyshawn is claiming that in the letter that Supreme wrote to fire Tyshawn, they claimed that this Marc Jacobs photo shoot was in violation of his contract, and that's why they needed to fire him. Per Tyshawn's contract with Supreme, he apparently is allowed to do at least 3 enumerated, whatever the fuck that means, non-Supreme brands, which Supreme acknowledges as excluded from the exclusivity clause. So I think he's allowed to work with up to 3 other brands doing photo shoots or whatever. And then that's supposedly this arbitrary limit, I guess, that was set in the contract. This is all from the document, by the way, that Tyshawn and his lawyers have filed. They list some of the photo shoots that Tyshawn has done. He worked with Louis Vuitton, Gucci, David Yurman, Alexander McQueen, Willie Chavaria, Prada. He's probably done other shit too. So he's almost certainly during the duration of his contract violated this 3 brand deal limit. This Marc Jacobs photo shoot at the time, because I think this is the last one that he did before they fired him, just based off the limited 2-3 number of brands he was allowed to work with, Marc Jacobs would have been outside that number, so that would have been in violation of his contract. Now we get to some finger pointing from Tyshawn and his team, and it's funny that in this lawsuit, I think there's a lot of contradictory, unless I'm misunderstanding this, which is entirely possible, but there seems to be a lot of contradictory information, which kind of makes me think if he's contradicting himself in his own lawsuit, then I would imagine that Supreme is going to have some good defenses to some of the stuff that he's claiming. So here basically he's saying, even if this, if it's true that Marc Jacobs shoot was in violation of his contract because he was outside of his allotted 3 brand photo shoots or whatever, he's blaming Supreme, saying, well, Supreme never told me that I couldn't do it, so I did it. Basically, it doesn't matter if it's over 3, it's not my fault because they didn't tell me I couldn't. So I think Tyshawn is kind of trying to set a standard or level of understanding that he had within his relationship with Supreme, where he's saying here, when Tyshawn was first approached by such third parties about photo shoot participation or involvement in modeling campaigns featuring non-Supreme brands, and prior to being featured in editorials, Tyshawn was transparent and open about those opportunities to Supreme senior executives, agents with whom he consistently liaised during the course of the relationship, to explore openly whether it would be objectionable in any way for Tyshawn to accept such modeling work. So he's saying, in the past, I have asked permission and they never had an issue with it. Specifically, this was their position. We don't want to get in your way so long as you're not doing anything for another skateboarding brand or a skateboarding team. We don't have a problem with it and don't want to stand in the way of you making money. It sounds to me like they were tolerant of him doing these photo shoots because they knew he stood to make a lot of money from doing them. Now, for some reason, Tyshawn's lawsuit spends a lot of time trying to convince the reader that these non-Supreme photo shoots were not only helpful to Tyshawn, they were actually really good for Supreme as well. Specifically saying these shoots had a strong positive impact on Supreme, serving to elevate the standing of the brand as its skateboarding team reached corners of the luxury fashion market not previously achieved. They're really trying to hammer home this idea that not only was, Tyshawn basically making extra money on the side, but it was also good for Supreme and they should have been happy about it. They're really insistent upon that. But what's funny is they weren't able to provide a quote or any comment from Supreme basically encouraging this behavior or saying anything about it other than we will allow you to do it because we want you to make money. Supreme, from as far as I can tell, they never stated, oh yes, we love when you do this, Tyshawn. We love when you do all of these extra photo shoots. So this is what I'm talking about when I say conflicting information. Tyshawn actually supplies an example of how Kyle Demers, who at Supreme, how he reacted to one of these photo shoots with Louis Vuitton, and he had turned a blind eye to it. Now, Tyshawn's lawsuit is framing this as every time he does one of these classy photo shoots, it's exceptionally beneficial to both Tyshawn and Supreme. Meanwhile, this is an example of an actual reaction that Supreme had to one of these photo shoots. And by the way, they make it clear that Tyshawn in this lawsuit only does all these really high-profile modeling gigs. Tyshawn's participation in these shoots featured Tyshawn wearing apparel or accessories of high-end, rare, and/or premier luxury goods of global luxury brands of considerable renown. Those promotional materials helped further the notoriety for both Tyshawn and Supreme. They're conveniently leaving out the Warby Parker deal that Tyshawn did, which is a discount, basically drop shipping glasses company. Believe me, as a guy who wears glasses, I would fucking know just how shitty they are. Supreme serving to elevate the standing of the brand as its skateboarding team reached corners of the luxury fashion market not previously achieved. Really specifically saying, not only am I the MJ of skateboarding, but also nobody that's ever rode for Supreme was a model before me. Come on, dude. Alex Olson, Dylan Reeder, you're not the first hot guy to skate for Supreme, bro. And you might think it's odd that he would make this factually inaccurate claim by saying he was the first Supreme rider to be a model. And there's a reason that he's doing this, because he is trying to make the claim here and in other parts of this lawsuit that he brought Supreme to new heights. He has been a massive force in elevating the brand. So these like random comments about Tyshawn being the MJ of skateboarding is like, oh, Tyshawn is jerking himself off again, even in a legal document. What a surprise. No, there's actually a reason that they're setting things up this way. Just a little side note, this is the saddest attempt I've ever seen at inflating somebody's importance. You're supposed to have incredible lawyers, Tyshawn. What the fuck is this? Tyshawn has achieved notoriety to the point where he is no longer referred to as Tyshawn Jones, but simply Tyshawn. Yeah, that's his fucking name, man. And he's the only Tyshawn in skateboarding. Next time I sit down and have a nice family dinner and they call me by my first name, I'm be like, that's fucking right. You guys understand the importance, the gravitational pull that I bring to the proceedings. So stupid. The names Tyshawn and Supreme go hand in hand, akin to the relationship shared by Nike and Michael Air Jordan. On its face, Jordan never got fired by Nike. This is Elliott Hill, the CEO of Nike. Now, Michael Jordan could walk into Elliott Hill's office, unzip his pants, and pee directly onto Elliott Hill's forehead while streaming it on Instagram Live. And you know what Elliott would have to say about that? He would say, thank you, Michael. Very cool. Nike owns Jordan. Jordan is a subsidiary of the Nike brand. Nike is worth, I think, $31 billion. Jordan is worth $6 billion, making Jordan brand about a fifth of the overall value of Nike. That's what Jordan brings to the table, a fifth of the fucking brand. Now, Tyshawn owns a couple brands. He owns Hardy's Hardware. He owns Brick Underneath. He owns King Skateboards. Supreme's most recent valuation, it was just sold for $1.6 billion. Do you think any of those brands are worth anywhere near a fifth of $1.6 billion? No, I don't think so. Additionally, it doesn't even fucking matter because Supreme doesn't own any of those brands. This comparison is not based in reality. It's completely absurd. Most people only have the balls to compare themselves to one NBA legend. You could call me the MJ of skateboarding, then I'm gonna give myself a Kobe graphic as well. I guess you could say I'm something like a combination of Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan.
I think with, gaining success and as you grow, you should always stay humble.
Jordan or Kobe? Might as well take them both.
They're trying to make a case in an abstract way that Tyshawn was this integral part of building the brand. And I'm not saying Tyshawn wasn't an important part of building Supreme's branding. I do believe that he is, and Supreme was willing to pay him $1 million a year. They clearly also believe that he was. But you can't compare yourself to Michael Jordan, dude. It sounds fucking dumb. And it seems like Tyshawn was given permission to do just about whatever the fuck it is that he wanted to. What they specifically did not want him to do is any skateboarding stuff, wearing other companies' merchandise. No skateboarding. Even more specifically, with prior agreements between the parties, the agreement contemplates Tyshawn's mostly exclusive endorsement of Supreme and other related obligations to support or to promote Supreme, including prominently wearing Supreme apparel whenever he is engaged in skateboarding. So if he's on a skateboard, he needs to be wearing Supreme or they're not okay with it. There's a difference between modeling clothes in a photo shoot and riding a skateboard. Supreme is a skateboarding fashion brand. They pay Tyshawn to wear their fashion on his skateboard. Louis Vuitton skateboard, Louis Vuitton jacket. These are a Louis Vuitton Timberland collab. He's skating in Louis Vuitton stuff. This got 869,000 likes. So I don't even know how many views that is. It doesn't tell you. I'm sure you could find out pretty easily. But like, that's almost 1 million likes. So that's probably 10 million, 8 million fucking views. And if you're Supreme, you're like, yeah, we pay this guy $1 million a year to skate in our stuff. We allow our guys to model because it's like, you know, it's good for them. You don't want to hold these dudes back or whatever. Even this guy coming, LVs everywhere. Like at that point, I'd imagine Supreme is like, okay, fuck this dude. Again, another Louis Vuitton post. He's also skating in Louis Vuitton in this video too. Literally the only thing he's not supposed to do.
I should be a pro streamer, but I chose skateboarding.
Just as there's no confusion time-wise, these Louis Vuitton posts are from January of 2024. Tyshawn was fired in September of 2024. These Louis Vuitton posts were before he was fired. Tyshawn makes the argument he was acting in good faith. Now, I don't see how you could possibly, with this piece of evidence, come to the conclusion that him skating twice in Louis Vuitton gear when he has a contract that specifically forbids him from doing that. In the past, he had pretty much been given freedom to do just about whatever he wanted modeling-wise, wearing other clothes. How this couldn't be perceived by Supreme as a deliberate violation or even like an aggravating or agitating act by him. Then he turns around and goes, I never meant to do anything wrong. And then he sues them. I think this is a pretty bad look that on his Instagram, he specifically has a video of him violating the agreement with Supreme, and he is the one who is taking them to court. From my perspective, it doesn't look particularly good. And a large part of this lawsuit is the idea that Supreme has damaged Tyshawn's reputation. They say it's irretrievable damage. It's irreparable. His young career. That's my bad. Let me actually read Tyshawn's full list of qualifications. Please don't sue me, Tyshawn. I'm reading your whole bio here. Young, athletic, handsome, marketable model known for being one of the best professional skateboarders in the history of the sport. Please fuck me now. Dude, if you're so worried about your reputation, like, what do you think it looks like to other brands when there is video evidence of you violating the agreement that you made with them, then you sue them? Do you think that that makes you look like employable or a tantalizing prospect to do business with? Now, the flip side of that is maybe Tyshawn is aware of how bad this looks, and he's only suing Supreme for all this money because he genuinely believes that his career is actually over. Where if you check his Instagram page, just side note, hopefully nobody tells Louis Vuitton or CEO of Mercedes-Benz Formula One team, Toto Wolff, that this guy is unemployable because he seems to still be doing stuff. Now, it's pretty hard to make a determination, like on the surface, based on how much business or opportunity Tyshawn may or may not have lost out on because of what Supreme said about him, which is that we kicked him off for violating his contract. But what's interesting is that Tyshawn and his team make no attempt to actually present a case for that. Like, you would think that if I had lost all of this business in 2025, end of 2024, because Supreme executives were telling people they had to kick me off the team, then I would have no issue providing that data to prove my point. But instead, they specifically say they will not be providing that data because what Supreme said about Tyshawn is so bad, it's so disparaging that it is self-evident that he has been cost money. For me, as an observer of this, I'm like, okay, it sounds like you guys don't want to supply any of this evidence because you don't have it. It feels like it's just circular logic. Tyshawn's career is over and he lost a bunch of money because we said he did. So there's a non-disclosure agreement attached to this contract, but it's pretty funny that Tyshawn, part of the reason he's suing is because Supreme told people, yeah, we kicked him off because he violated his contract, when that's exactly what he did. All right, so I've spent a lot of time just making fun of Tyshawn, but I do think that he may be able to actually get some money out of this, even if about 85% of it seems like complete horseshit. I think as long as 10 to 15% of it, there's something there, he might be able to actually get paid off of this. I've demonstrated, I think, that Tyshawn was in clear violation of his contract with the Louis Vuitton skateboarding clip and the Louis Vuitton, like fashion show Ollie or whatever the fuck. But what's interesting is, according to this lawsuit, that is not the reason that Supreme gave for firing Tyshawn. They seem to just sort of arbitrarily select this Marc Jacobs photo shoot, even though it's pretty similar to a bunch of other photo shoots that he had already done. So I really have no idea why they would do this, considering the Louis Vuitton clip is pretty much a smoking gun in this case. I don't think it would fully exonerate Supreme from everything, but I think it would be a strong indication that because it's a large theme in Tyshawn's case that he was acting in good faith, I think that given that clip, it's clear that he was not acting in good faith and he was deliberately violating the terms of the agreement. I actually think if that clip was not on his Instagram page, unless there's something I'm missing or I don't understand that makes that clip okay, I think Tyshawn would have a pretty good case for wrongful termination. But that, I think, shows he has been intentionally pissing them off for some time now. So despite the fact that Tyshawn was doing stuff he should not have been doing, it may turn out to be irrelevant because this is a clause in the contract, something about this cure thing where it says the agreement contains a breach and right of termination clause, providing that either party could terminate the agreement immediately upon written notice in certain enumerated circumstances, but in all events only after receiving a written notice of default from the other party and failing to cure same within 30 days following such receipt. So basically this is saying if somebody has an issue, either party has an issue with the way that business is being done, they have an obligation per the contract to notify the other party of this grievance. Only after they have a meeting to cure or rectify this issue, only then, if it is, not something that can be rectified, only then can one party terminate the agreement. So it seems like Supreme did not attempt to have this meeting and they just terminated his contract immediately without curing. The agreement does not contain language providing for an immediate termination by either party. So Tyshawn's team is claiming no matter what it is that Tyshawn did, they would need to have this meeting or else the termination would be wrongful and that would give him grounds to sue. So here's the other area it looks like Tyshawn might be able to get some money from Supreme. It says the agreement contains a no disparagement clause prescribing the parties from engaging in a conduct that might tend to cast or portray the other in a poor, unflattering, or negative light or give rise to any similar inference. Also, the agreement contains a confidentiality clause prescribing the parties from disclosing confidential information defined to include the agreement itself and its terms to any person or entity without prior express written permission. After Supreme fired Tyshawn's team is saying that they had to keep that a secret. They weren't allowed to talk about the agreement. They weren't allowed to talk about the relationship at all, I don't really think. They're saying they have evidence. Tyshawn talked to this famous photographer, and also he's hearing it from people in the industry that even James Jebbia, who's like the head honcho at Supreme, that people are going around, they're telling other fashion fucking people that they had to let go of Tyshawn because he violated the contract. Now, whether or not that is true, per this clause, they're still not supposed to do that. So I'm going to kind of summarize, I think, what may have happened. From my point of view, I'm not involved in this situation. This is all just speculation, only reading also one side of the story. This is Tyshawn's argument. We have no idea what Supreme will say, if we'll ever hear anything about it, or if they'll just settle it out of court, which seems like it'll be pretty likely. But just based off of Tyshawn's argument, which I think there are a lot of holes in, I think he's just like kind of throwing whatever out there, hoping that some of this sticks. But there's clearly a lot of bullshit in here. I think Tyshawn was probably a pain in the ass to work with. I also think that Louis Vuitton post upset Supreme. And what's funny is part of Tyshawn's argument, another area that contradicts itself, is, well, Supreme never said anything other than they were supportive and it was positive and it was totally mutually beneficial to Supreme whenever Tyshawn did all of these photo shoots that made him a bunch of money. Supreme loved it, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, they also quote, I think it's James Jebbia saying, yeah, the Louis Vuitton shoot, we turn a blind eye to that. So they're supplying their own narrative, then they're supplying evidence that contradicts that narrative. So I think that annoyed Supreme. Then what I would guess happened after that is he did the Marc Jacobs photo shoot without asking permission, without communicating that he was going to do that, when he knew Supreme was already kind of pissed off with him. And I think they chose to fire him over that and be like, okay, if this guy like really like completely violated the contract and then just went out and did another photo shoot without even consulting us, like, yeah, fuck this guy. And I think they fired him. I'm guessing they just used the Marc Jacobs photo shoot in the termination letter. That's what Tyshawn is saying. They didn't supply the letter. I'm sure they have it. But I think they just cited the Marc Jacobs photo shoot in the termination letter because they didn't expect it to come to this. I don't think Supreme thought that Tyshawn would actually sue over any of this. I think they would have thought that he knew what he was doing was wrong. The timing of this, I think, does look pretty bad for Supreme. I think it would have been a lot smarter for them if they had just fired him right after the Louis Vuitton thing. But the fact that they just fired him with no meeting, a week or something, or however long it was before the sale of the company, I think looks pretty suspicious. And I honestly think that factored into their decision. I think they were unhappy with the arrangement. And I think they probably made the decision like, yeah, I don't think we want to pay this guy stock options, when in their minds, he probably did not deserve them. I think Supreme is guilty time-wise of firing him because they didn't want to give him those stock options. I think there were probably events that transpired leading up to that point that made them feel that way. I feel like it was a two birds, one stone situation possibly, where they're like, yeah, this guy's violating the contract. We're about to sell the company. Do we really want to pay this dude out given his previous behavior? Probably not. And if Tyshawn's lawyers can prove that, because the timing does look bad, I think that's one of the most likely areas in which he could be awarded some money from my point of view. Yeah, I think that's most of it. And as far as Tyshawn suing over the defamation and that clause being there, I don't think Supreme thought he would sue. I think the guys working for Supreme, like, they obviously talk about everything that's going on. They obviously talk about gossip and shit that's transpiring. And I think they probably told people like, yeah, we fired him because he was being an asshole. And then Tyshawn heard that and he's like, okay, I'm going to sue them because they're not allowed to say that. Even if he was being an asshole, which it seems like he was. The question is, and this is what I suppose Tyshawn will be trying to calculate here, is this lawsuit, do his lawyers think he can make enough money off this lawsuit that will offset further career and reputational damages that he will probably sustain from this. Because, like I said before, suing your former employer is an extremely bad look to potential future employers. That's going to make them not want to hire you. So either he really thinks that his value in the marketplace has diminished, and this is like the only way he can make some money right now, or he thinks he can like make a bunch of money off of this. I think he's going to get a little bit. I think that he has clearly acted wrongfully. I think the majority of the narrative of his lawsuit is false. I don't think that he doesn't seem like he was like really an upstanding business partner. I don't think he was as communicative as he claims. I think he intentionally violated the agreement, and I think he annoyed Supreme. And while on some technicalities, he might be able to tag them a few times, I think a judge or whoever is going to look at this case is probably going to check out the details, and I'm sure they'll hear from Supreme, and I think there's going to be a decent amount of evidence against Tyshawn. That's my guess. Who knows? He could win $76 fucking million, and that would be hilarious.